live now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Beautiful live now look there in New York City. We also have this pretty cool shot there at the Statue of Liberty. These are live pictures right now. It's a little after 11 o'clock there Eastern time. Well, Justice Juan Merchan has granted a request from prosecutors and Trump's defense team to pause deadlines, including Donald Trump's sentencing date there in the hush money payments case, while they consider the effect of his election as president. Now, according to some of our Fox News insiders, the delay is not necessarily bad for Trump. And don't forget, remember, he asked the DA's office for it. It's possible it's the beginning of the end. Bragg's office may follow the lead of Jack Smith and change course now that Trump has been elected president. We will know Bragg's official perspective on November the 19th, just like we will know Smith's on December the 2nd. But we should not assume it will be a freezing of proceedings while Trump is president. It's possible, but it's not inevitable. So let's talk about all the pending legal cases against Donald Trump as he is now president-elect with our friend, former federal prosecutor, Neama Rahmani. And Neama joins me. Neama, good to see you here. I think you and I last spoke before the election, or maybe after, I can't remember, but I had asked you essentially, what happens to all of this? Now that Trump is president-elect here, it seems things are moving in the right direction for Trump at the New York level with the hush money conviction here. It's on pause, the sentencing at least.
No question, Andrew, and we've talked about this, how a delay benefits the former president and now president-elect. So Trump does have some arguments in the New York hush money case, the best argument being that evidence of official acts came in at trial, and those, of course, were communications with Communications Director Hope Hicks. Those would arguably be official, and of course, under the Supreme Court's very broad presidential immunity ruling, not only are presidents immune for any official acts, but even evidence of that can't come into trial. And there was those communications with Hope Hicks. Of course, she was crying. That was discussed during the closing arguments, as well as some of the tweets that Trump sent about Michael Cohen while he was president. So all of that gives Donald Trump a pretty good argument to get a new trial. Obviously, a new trial is not going to happen while Trump is president, and probably very unlikely to happen after he's president. So the question is, what does Judge Juan Merchan do? And the fact that he keeps kicking this can down the road leads me to believe that he's considering very seriously this motion for a new trial or dismissal outright.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, too. I mean, could you envision a scenario where Donald Trump leaves the White House January 20th, 2029, I guess that would be, and he could face a sentencing date for this very case we're talking about now?
That's not going to happen, Andrew. This isn't even serious felony. We've talked about a Class C felonies under New York law. He wasn't going to get any time anyway, even if he lost the presidential election. Just logistically, we talked about how difficult it would be and how would it make sense to imprison a former president. Now that he's president-elect, it means it's even less likely. Really, the only question here from a legal perspective is Trump going to still be a convicted felon, serving no time, maybe a nominal fine? Does he have to deal with that with the appellate courts there in New York, first the appellate division of the Superior Court, the Supreme Court, then the Court of Appeal, which is the New York Supreme Court. And of course, it could end up all the way in the U.S. Supreme Court because this is a constitutional issue that they would address. But that's really the only issue. Is Trump a convicted felon that serves no time, or does the case get tossed entirely, in which case he's not a felon? And of course, the real sort of interesting legal issue is this. Technically, under state law, if Trump isn't sentenced, there's no judgment entered, and he's not really a felon. So unless that sentence happens at some point, Trump can tell everyone that even though he was found guilty, there was no judgment entered, and he's not a felon.
Oh, interesting. So we're talking about two different things, though. There's this effort afoot to vacate the conviction entirely, but there's also the matter of sentencing. So does one come first before the other, or do they work in tandem?
So the motion to dismiss happens before the sentencing, and Judge Juan Merchan was supposed to rule on it yesterday. He keeps pushing it out. He was supposed to actually rule on it and sentence Trump before the election. So the fact that he keeps pushing this out leads me to believe that it's something that he is considering. Now, if he rules on the motion and then proceeds with sentencing, then that judgment will be final. Trump will indeed be a convicted felon and he'll take his chance up on appeal. But if the motion is never heard or the sentencing never happens, then essentially this case is going to go away and Trump will have won not only in DC, Florida, and likely Georgia, but also in New York as well.
All right, Neama, while we have you, let's move up to the federal cases pending against Donald Trump as well, brought by special counsel Jack Smith. We're getting a better sense of what Jack Smith's trajectory is going to be for the duration of these cases, or maybe lack thereof. Politico has this, that Smith is pulling the plug on his other remaining criminal case against Trump, telling a federal appeals court to pause proceedings while he works on winding down his efforts in advance of Trump's inauguration. Smith's call to postpone deadlines in his case against Trump for hoarding classified documents at Mar-a-Lago follows an identical move to pause his prosecution against Trump in Washington on charges for attempting to subvert the 2020 election here. So, Jack Smith winding down these efforts here, is it safe to say that he has resigned from these cases, or is that too far yet?
Andrew, and pause may not be the operative word because he's going to have to pull the plug. And I mean, these cases are over. The South Florida case, that case, of course, was dismissed by Judge Cannon because Smith's appointment was reportedly unconstitutional. It violated the appropriations and appointments clauses of the Constitution because he wasn't confirmed by the Senate. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of Senate confirmations coming up real soon, so that's going to be an issue that I'm sure we're going to be talking about. But that case is on appeal to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, and there is that interesting constitutional question: was Smith's appointment constitutional? I mean, it doesn't just affect him; it affects special counsels in other cases. Potentially, Hunter Biden, for instance, who's made the same argument, but since Trump can't be prosecuted, the question is, does he move forward with that appeal to prosecute the co-defendants, Walt Nada? These are obviously individuals who are far less culpable, who allegedly helped Trump obstruct justice and move the documents. But the main target can't be prosecuted. So I would expect that Smith would dismiss that appeal and just close that case. And obviously, same issue with the DC election fraud case. We're looking at the indictment right there. Trump cannot be prosecuted. And there's no mechanism to put these cases on pause or on hold, like you said, and retry Trump in 2029. It's not going to happen. There's statute of limitations issues. Trump, of course, like any criminal defendant, has a right to a speedy trial. So those two cases should absolutely go away.
So Politico writes it this way: Smith is widely expected to shutter his operation ahead of Trump's inauguration, though the precise manner of his exit is unclear. And help us make sense of kind of the special counsel appointment and office. He has a staff. Taxpayer money is used to help him pursue his investigations, so on and so forth here. So does Jack Smith just go quietly into the night? Does he come out in front of cameras and say he's resigning and he's dropping the cases altogether? If he does that, Trump doesn't get the satisfaction of firing Jack Smith like he said throughout the campaign, right?
I'm almost certain that Smith will resign before Trump is inaugurated, because whether it's Matt Gaetz or another attorney general, I think the first order of business would be to fire Jack Smith. Let's talk a little bit about how the special counsel works. So the attorney general appoints a special counsel. He or she has their own budget. That's one of the challenges that Trump had because it doesn't get funding from Congress. It's automatic. And after an investigation concludes, he or she must prepare a report. So could be David Weiss and Hunter Biden or any other. We saw obviously the special counsel who investigated Joe Biden and the report that he prepared saying that, President Joe Biden shouldn't be prosecuted because he's a nice, forgetful old man. So there really should be some report at the conclusion of the case. But the question is, this case really hasn't concluded. Obviously, there was no trial. Jack Smith's report would be very short and essentially say that, under long-standing Department of Justice memoranda going back to the 70s that was re-upped in 2000, a sitting president can't be prosecuted. So I had to close these cases. They're really going to go out with a whimper and not a bang. And I wouldn't expect something public. That report goes to Merrick Garland. He decides whether to release it in its entirety or if there's classified or confidential portions that have to be redacted. But I wouldn't expect a whole lot from Jack Smith's report. I expect him to retire and move on to the private sector.
Yeah, and according to Politico, any report he does kind of make known or compile, whether or not that's released is under the discretion of Attorney General Merrick Garland. And so obviously there's a very abbreviated timetable to do all of this. Inauguration is January 20th. I just want to take stock, Neama, because you and I have spoken so much about the Trump legal cases. We have devoted hours and hours of coverage here on Live Now from Fox to the 4 Trump indictments, the 4 arraignments, the appearances, every minute update and detail on these cases. And to think that Trump will be in the White House in a mere matter of months, and it is a very likely possibility that they could all just go away. I mean, that's quite stunning if you think about that. To think about how much breath and words and verbiage was devoted to covering them.
No question. I mean, we've spent hours and hours dissecting every detail of the New York case, Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen's testimony. Are individuals going to flip on Donald Trump in Florida or Georgia? Fonnie Willis, her relationship with her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, hiring him with taxpayer funds, $35 million that Jack Smith has spent on these prosecutions, assembling these teams of veteran career prosecutors. And just like that, Donald Trump has made them all go away. I would say this is a remarkable comeback, not just politically, but legally. I've never seen anything like this for someone to beat multiple federal cases, likely be multiple state cases, charging some very serious crimes. So Donald Trump, of course, is something of an enigma, but this is something I've never seen before in my more than 20 years of practice as a lawyer.
And Neama, while we have you, Trump made his pick today at the Department of Justice as Attorney General, and that's Congressman Matt Gaetz, or should I say former Congressman Matt Gaetz. He resigned effective immediately after this pick was made today. And Neama, I just have to ask, from your legal perspective, is Matt Gaetz qualified to lead the Department of Justice?
Andrew, Matt Gaetz is not qualified to lead the Department of Justice. Here is someone who has absolutely no criminal experience whatsoever as a defense attorney or a prosecutor. He's never prosecuted a single case. His only experience with criminal cases are his own criminal problems. And I understand Donald Trump wants someone loyal in the Attorney General's office. He may go on his revenge tour and prosecute his political opponents. But I would think he would hire someone that has some experience doing so. I don't understand this pick at all. It's really a head scratcher because, again, he has no experience whatsoever. And I'm not even talking about his criminal problems, the alleged sex trafficking. I'll even assume for the moment that he's actually innocent and he wasn't talking to members of Congress about underage women that he had sexual relations with. It just doesn't make sense from an experience perspective. I don't understand why he is going to be running the Department of Justice. He's going to run it into the ground. And look, hopefully I'm wrong. Donald Trump has proven me wrong time and time again when it comes to legal cases. So maybe I will sit here and I will eat my words. But just judging this right now, I'm shocked. I know members of Congress are shocked. They've said that he's intelligent, but this isn't a matter of Matt Gaetz's intelligence. It's a matter of his experience, and he just doesn't have any.
So, Neama, let's think back to Trump's, 3 attorneys general in the first term. You had Jeff Sessions. You had briefly, when he essentially fired Jeff Sessions, Matthew Whitaker. And Matthew Whitaker's name had been kind of bandied about and reported on as a top contender at DOJ. And then you had Bill Barr, who had already served in the role under George H.W. Bush. How do those 3 men stack up to Gaetz?
You can't even compare their experience to Gates. You know, obviously Bill Barr, a veteran prosecutor, Sessions obviously had the experience, significant congressional experience. Even Whitaker, I think, came out, and I have to double check, but there were reports that even, you know, he was questioning this pick. You know, I was surprised he didn't go with someone like Senator Lee or Paxton, the Attorney General from Texas. I mean, these are individuals that are Trump allies. But again, they have that experience. They know how to run a department because this isn't just about politics. There's some very significant cases the Department of Justice is handling right now. We've talked about the prosecution of Sean Diddy Combs, huge sex trafficking case. Mayor Adams from New York, that prosecution is happening. The former CEO of Abercrombie and Finch for sex trafficking. I mean, this isn't just about politics. This is the nation's leading prosecutor. And even if you want someone to move your agenda forward, mass deportations, criminal prosecutions of individuals in the country unlawfully, you got to hire someone that knows what they're doing. And I don't think Matt Gaetz is that person.
All right, Neema, for just the sake of argumentation and for this interview, can you think of a positive attribute Gates would bring to the DOJ?
Yeah, Gates is, by all accounts, a smart fellow. He voted against the TikTok ban. He filed a brief in support of the Google antitrust case. He's taken a position with respect to the FTC's ban on non-competes. So again, he's obviously a lawyer. He doesn't have a ton of experience, but he has taken positions on some thorny, complicated legal issues. My concern is the lack of criminal experience leading one of the largest departments in the country, and of course the largest law firm essentially in the country, the Department of Justice, with thousands of career prosecutors.
All right, Neama Rahmani, we'll have to leave it at that. Neema, have a good night. Always fun to talk about all these things with you, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Andrew. Talk to you soon.